Testing, testing, testing audio. Test, 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 testing, testing, testing audio. Hang on, say something, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Testing, testing.
Time is nigh, councillors. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Greater Hume Shire Council, the 19th of August 2020. In accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, this council meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Council's website for public information. All present today are reminded that by speaking you are agreeing to your view and comments being recorded and published. You are also reminded that if and when speaking, you are to be respectful to others and use appropriate language. Greater Hume Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this meeting. I'm going to call on Councillor Knight to lead us in prayer. So this is Councillor Knight's last council meeting with us, so lead on, Councillor Knight. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for all of your blessings. We ask for your strength and guidance throughout this meeting and thereafter, as we look to serve the residents of this shire. We ask for clear thinking and sincere hearts as we approach the business matters we will be discussing shortly. We ask for your blessings upon this meeting, each participant, and the work and people they represent. Amen.
Thank you. Just before we do the acknowledgement, I'd like to welcome Mr David Maxwell here to the meeting this evening, so I hope you enjoy listening in and sitting in on our meeting. Welcome. Acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present. No apologies. Any applications for leave of absence by anyone? Nil, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you. Councillor Hicks has moved, seconded. Councillor Parker, do you wish to speak, Councillor Hicks? No? Thank you. Any comments or questions, councillors? Prepared to vote? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Action report from the minutes. Are there any comments, questions, issues? Page number and item number, please. Minute number, if you have any. No? All clear? Very good. We'll move along. Disclosure of interests. Do we have one? No. Thank you. A mayoral minute, which is the item number 1, the General Manager Annual Performance Review and General Manager's Contract of Employment, and this will be referred to closed council.
Move the matter be referred to closed council, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer and Councillor Weston. All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Where are we? Notice of motions? No. Reports from officers. Item number 1, Environment and Planning, Development Application. Change of use.
Move that we suspend standing orders so we can have a discussion on the matter.
On a matter?
On the matter, number 1.
In governance? No. Oh, environment and planning? Yes, okay, moved. Councillor Quinn and seconded Councillor Knight. Sorry, all those in favour? Carried, thank you. Councillor Quinn?
I'd like to know what the applicants think of the hours and like to discuss the hours and the effect it might have on the town. In general, the trucks moving through town, etc. I think we should discuss all the issues that could be raised so that we might adjust some of the recommendations.
Madam Mayor, the applicant has asked 2 emails that he's forwarded today to be read out, along with one of the objectors has also asked that some correspondence she's forwarded to council to be read out, which we probably should have done in the public forum, but it's probably appropriate that we do that now, so that if everybody's comfortable with that, so that all councillors can ascertain what's been distributed today, if that's all right with you, Madam Mayor.
It certainly is.
Councillors?
I'll do the reading if that's okay, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, just before they start, just a reminder to put the microphones really quite close when you're speaking. Having watched the meeting last month, it's really hard to hear if the mic's not up so close. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as the General Manager said, I've got 2 submissions to read from a person who put in a submission. and I've received some correspondence last night from the applicant that pertains to the hours, and some more today. So I'll start with the applicant. Okay, this is the first bit of correspondence received last night. As everyone is aware, earlier this year, the devastating bushfires destroyed a huge area of pine plantation that were owned by Forestry Corporation of New South Wales and Hume Forests, as well as other private plantation owners. Malik Holdings are a logistic and export company which have been working extremely closely with these parties to enable them to salvage as much of the burnt plantation as possible. In conjunction with Forestry Corp New South Wales and Hume's in-house harvest operation, Malik are currently employing an additional 30 harvesting contractors and 60 haulage contractors to assist in the salvage operation. The issue that these forestry owners face is that there is a time window to recover the burnt logs. Currently, both the domestic market and the export market, Malik, are consuming the burnt logs, but the domestic market will not be able to continue utilising the log products for long due to the timber quality deterioration. It is estimated that the domestic market consumption will cease over the next 2 to 3 months. This will mean that the salvage operations will be extremely dependent on the export outlet. The forestry owners need the highest possible recovery to enable them to recoup their losses. Malik's export program will be able to continue consuming the burnt logs for up to 18 months from now. Malik has been working closely with Forest Corp New South Wales to ensure that as the domestic market ceases consumption, Malik will have increased capacity to consume this volume. As a result, Malik now has 12 full-time employees at the Holbrook site, 30 harvest contractors and 100 haulage contractors. This equates to an excess of 430 people employed to operate Malik's salvage program. Malik understands that there are challenges and potential issues that can arise from the operations at the Holbrook site, such as noise, dust and mud issues. Malik are currently undertaking the following measures to minimise the dust and mud issues. We are utilising a water truck and a sweeper to minimise dust and to clean the entry-exit points. When working with heavy machinery on gravel surfaces, dust and mud is always a challenge. Malik has employed a water truck to spray the yard down and in turn clean sweep the entry-exit points in 1 to 2 hour intervals. Malik also understands that the salvage operation at Holbrook site has the potential to cause noise issues. Currently, to maximise the potential capacity to move large volumes of logs, we are operating from 4 a.m. to midnight. The council has expressed that they would prefer the operating hours to be from 6 a.m. to midnight. We understand and respect the request for 6 hours of non-operation. Unfortunately, due to our truck rotation, these times do not work for our operation, cause too much congestion. Malik proposes that council and the Holbrook community consider allowing the following: maintain a 6-hour window of non-operation at the site, adjusting the operating hours to 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. The first hour of operation, Malik will primarily load the empty trucks in the area located in the back southwest corner of the site. This location, as shown on the below map, is sheltered by shedding, which should reduce the noise impacts on Spring Street. Saturday and Sunday operating hours can remain as per council's suggestion of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'll talk about that in a minute. By allowing Malik to operate these hours, it will reduce the congestion in and around the Holbrook site. Currently, the truck schedule at Holbrook is as per below. Between 4 to 6:30 a.m, the main wave of empty trucks are loaded at Holbrook to go to Melbourne. From 6 a.m, the loaded plantation trucks arrive at Holbrook to be unloaded. These loaded trucks have left the plantation at about 3:30 to 4 a.m. By having this separation between when the empty trucks start arriving and when the full trucks start arriving, reduces the risk of large congestion in and around this site dramatically. Malik are committed to working with the Holbrook community to ensure that this salvage operation has minimal adverse impacts on the community members. We hope the Holbrook community can allow us to operate during these proposed hours so that we can continue to efficiently assist the local forest owners with their fire salvage operations. Close. I actually replied to that and said that I would recommend to council that the hours should be from 10 p.m. to 5 p.m. And he responded to my email, 5 a.m., 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And he replied with a short email. Even if you could support a 10:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. close, this would be appreciated. 10 p.m. would be quite tight. We double shift all the trucks coming from Melbourne, 2 runs per day per truck. Sometimes the trucks coming up from Melbourne can have complications, which means they are delayed. I could comfortably ensure that all trucks would arrive and left the Holbrook site by 10:30, 11 p.m, but 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. would be tight for the trucks to double shift. This would be much appreciated if you could support the above operating hours. So he's saying 10:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. That's the closing hours, yes. That's when they're closed. So why I'm keeping going, I might as well keep going, I think.
Yes, thank you.
So this is the letter from submitters that was requested to be read. I won't read the address bit. We acknowledge receipt of your letter dated the 2nd of the 7th, 20, which we received Monday the 6th of the 7th, 20, with the attached statement of effects duly signed by Andrew Mahoney of Malik Holdings Proprietary Limited. We appreciate finally to get confirmation of what is happening in our quiet neighbourhood in regards to the development application at 13 Bond Street, Holbrook, the address used by Grady Hume, but Malik Holdings says it is 21 Bond Street, Holbrook, ? We have a good knowledge of the problems already experienced at the site since it first started operating approximately 3 months ago. Firstly, we can appreciate the problem in recovering the burnt logs and take them to the processing plant in Melbourne as soon as possible, but consideration must be taken into account for nearby residents. The hours of operation stated by Malik is 4 a.m. to 2 a.m. Monday to Friday and Saturday to Sunday 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the next 18 months. This is unacceptable. We are constantly woken up every night, starting from any time from 1 a.m. to the constant dropping of logs from 3 a.m. right through to 7 a.m. There is no escaping the noise. Even changing rooms does not help. When the logs drop on the ground, there is vibration. We note Mr Mahoney ticked the box no to will the development have any noise impacts above background levels. We were always to believe there was to be no now loud noises in the neighbourhood after 10 p.m. at night. We have been told the noise coming from there can be heard as far as way in Vine and Forward Street. This must exceed the normal noise levels acceptable. We would invite council to use a sound level meter to take a noise measurement compliance with noise regulations when the sources are operating between these early morning hours when the logs are being unloaded from the trucks and dropped to the ground. We've counted up to a dozen trucks waited to be unloaded at one time. With these hours running 24 hours, 7 days a week, we experience broken sleep, we're sleep deprived, we all have to get up each day and go to work, and to make us put up with this for another 18 months will have a big impact on our health. Surely a compromise in operational hours can be achieved. Other businesses would not be allowed in our shire to operate at these hours. Even from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. would be acceptable so we all could get a good night's sleep. We also hear the trucks coming and going all the time. We note the route of the truck will be along Millswood Road and Bond Street, as mentioned in the comment section under Access Traffic and Utilities section by Mr Mahoney. We have noticed trucks coming down Raymond Street, Spring Street and Prospect Street. I passed 2 fully loaded trucks at 6 p.m. on the narrow Bar Street Road. They turn right into Albury Street going southbound down the main street when they should be going out Millswood Road. It is disappointing to see trucks back into our town when council and Holbrook community rallied to get the Holbrook bypass to keep the trucks from going down our main street, to keep our community and residents safe. We look forward to working out a suitable solution for all residents who live in close proximity to the development site. Nearly there, a little bit to go. This is a follow-up, this is from the same person. This is a follow-up from my letter on the 9th of the 7th, 20. It has come to my attention that some of the residents along our area, i.e. Fleet, Spring, Raymond Street, did not receive a letter about the above application and therefore did not get to have their say about how the above is affecting them. There was nothing mentioned in the whole book happenings to inform the town of what is happening with the extra log trucks coming into our town and the storage transfer of logs at the mill. Malik Holdings Proprietary Limited claims there will be 100 trucks coming and going every day, dumping of logs and reloading. We ask that all these trucks coming into the mill and once loaded all use the exit at the Millswood Road. There's no reason for them to go down Bath or Raymond Street and go down the main street all hours of the day and night. This must be enforced for the safety of the residents and the community. So that's where we're at. There's soon, just before I hand it over for councillors to discuss, the hours for the weekend were originally requested at 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and that's what the person who put the submission has written down, and that's what I took from their statement of environmental effects. I think he's got himself a little bit confused in his letter from last night where he said the weekend hours would be 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. because that's not what he originally asked for. So, so that's a little change as well. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, Madam Mayor, that I can.
Thank you.
Councillors.
I have several. This has been operating for several months as a freight transport facility. It was a mill previously.
Yep.
As a mill, I doubt there would be anywhere near this volume of freight coming in and out. And I note that under amenity, the activity closes between 2 and 4. I would think it would be absolutely horrendous to have gone through that, even in the lead up to this. I would worry about people's mental health when they're losing the amount of sleep that it appears that they are.
Yep.
I really think even that one of the submitters has suggested 10:30 till 5 be the closures, and I can't imagine personally coping with 6.5 hours sleep every night. And I imagine that people arriving for work would intrude on those hours as they arrive to start work. They're not actually undertaking the work, but I'm imagining they're arriving to commence work even out of those hours. That one of the submitters said there's been up to 12 trucks in lines waiting, yet the proponent is suggesting that the whole idea of this is to stop congestion. I recall passing, or we passed this evening coming here, I think 4 log trucks going out. So I imagine they would have been there for a considerable period of time today and might well, so many more. With 100 haulage contractors, I don't know how many would be working at any given time, but the rate things are going currently, I would suggest at least 2/3, if not more, of that 100 would be working. I would hate to live in it. And down the bottom of page 5 of 75, the objectives of the RU5 Village Zone are, and the second point, to protect the amenity of residents. And over the page, one of the points soon following, it will provide additional services and facilities within the Holbrook Township. I can't quite understand what the additional services and facilities. The proposal is consistent with some, The proposal is consistent with some of the objectives, but has the potential to be inconsistent with others. And it says it will provide additional services and facilities. Well, this one most definitely.
Probably strike that out.
Yeah.
But they definitely patronising services and facilities.
Yes.
And that was probably my intent.
Yep.
So it's probably an error on my part. But I might have a go at responding to you, Councillor Knight, if I might. So, but it is in an industrial area in the RU5 zone, and under our LEP, we don't have different zonings within our towns. We just have the one zone, the RU5 zone, and this is a permitted use within that zone if they can show that it's able to meet the objectives, which we need to discuss tonight. So it is in an area that's shown in our DCP as an industrial area, and as I said in my report, if not this spot in Holbrook, there wouldn't be a better spot. That I don't think is in question. There wouldn't be an alternate spot in Holbrook that could better accommodate this development than that site. Whether that is enough, I don't know. But there's that point there that where else in Holbrook would you put this? I can't think of anywhere else that would offer a better alternative. So they did start 3 months before the approval process has flowed through. Before I notified, though, I did not receive one complaint about noise in that time. Okay, so I think that has to be acknowledged. I've done some noise testing with council's equipment over 5 days. And look, that was interesting in itself. I stared at those numbers, and they're quite technical noise assessments, but there's a parameter called the L90, which is the noise that exists for 90% of the time. Okay, so that's 90% of the time, and generally you might make a comparison between the L90 and the L10, and the L10 is the peaks of the noise. So that's the top end of the noise, which would probably be when they're banging around, okay? So for the L90, which was 90% of the time, the noise was really consistent across the 5 days that we tested, even when they were shut down, because there's still a lot of background noise coming off the highway between 2 and 4. That's not enough to trigger the L10 because it's a consistent noise out there on the highway, but the L10 had some big peaks, okay, which people could find annoying, which could be the banging of the logs and the like. How people react to noise is very individual, and we're all not the same. Some people, when they have a noise in the night that they are become used to, despite the fact that it's a peak, if it's a noise that's there consistently, they'll end up bothering them less. And I mean, if councillors indulge me, I might give you an example. If you live next to a train line where a train coming through in the night might sound his horn as he comes to a level crossing, for a little while that would wake people when they first moved to that area. But after a little while of living in that house near that train line, they would get used to that peak of that sounding of that horn. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but for a lot of people that would be the case, I think, and it would no longer wake them. They might hear it if they were already awake, but it wouldn't wake them. So the noise coming from this side is fairly complicated. There's some high peaks, which I said there, and it's coming off a base that's quite high. Like that L90 that I mentioned in the amenity there, of 42.19, if I compare that background noise level to other areas of the Shire, away from the Hume at night, their background level, it could be in the 20s. So it's already a very noisy spot, even without this being there, okay? So yeah, I had a background noise readings in Drogery West, for example, and all 20s at 2 to 4 o'clock in the night. So, yep. So the noise issue is quite complicated. I think there is the ability for council to give a consent if it wishes with these hours that the proponent is asking, and really with some insurance conditions that I've put in the DA. And if things really deteriorated on the noise front and council started to receive a lot of complaints, which up till now we haven't received, we invited people's comments and we got them, but they didn't come unsolicited, which perhaps my judge of people is that if it was a really big problem, we would have got unsolicited complaints. You would expect that, I think. So we didn't get that. But with some conditions of consent, if things deteriorated and we did start to get a lot of complaints, council can take other action, and we could adjust. We could make some adjustments using the Protection of the Environment Operations Act. Could issue a prevention notice. That could cause an outcome where this development became untenable for the proponent. But they haven't spent a lot of money to go in there either. They've just used the site as it is, and if it became untenable, well then they may have to make their own decisions if that eventuated. So there a little bit of ability for council to actually come in and take some rectification if these hours prove to be not suitable.
Only that you did say that there is no other more suitable location in Holbrook. Is there a more suitable location adjacent to where this timber is being harvested?
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be, I'm absolutely certain.
Okay.
Especially not with the way the weather is.
Councillors, remember to turn our microphones on as we speak.
Councillor Shulg?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just Mr Kane has answered some questions. I think we need to seriously consider this proposal. There's a lot of conditions already. They've ticked most of the boxes. They've come back with some adjustments to the requests. They're addressing the dust and the mud and street cleaning. It's not a long-term project. We do have a lot of logging in part of our shire. It's an important part of our shire. It's not going for 24 hours a day as it was indicated somewhere in the notes. The time slot is a very short space of time to salvage this burnt timber. And with some of the trucks not quite going in the right streets, there was mention in a response, can't think where it is now, I marked it, that the truckies would be given a direct map of the route that they're meant to take, so that should eliminate a lot of that problem. And like you said, with noise, like since we've moved, we're very used to trains now. Like you do get used to noises. I'm not saying that that's a lovely noise to hear with, you know, massive logs being dumped, but surely with the modification of the hours of operation, that should help. And like I said, it's not going for the next 5 years or something. It might be a few more months or whatever, but I think we need to seriously consider this in a positive way.
Thank you. Councillor Parker?
Oh, sorry. I think we've come a long way from when we started, when Mr Pinnock started his conversations with the applicant. I did remember coming in and dropping my husband off up in that area one morning, and there was 53 trucks waiting to get in and out. So, you know, we have come a long way. They were parked on the wrong street. They were two side by side. So, you know, I think that's working. I'd had a complaint about the dust. I didn't have a complaint about the noise, and it is in an industrial estate. Two things that I probably think that we need to clarify is those weekend hours. I think the 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. is probably stretching it a little bit on a weekend. And the other thing that concerns me, there is a lot of rubbish in the main street of Holbrook, you know, from the trucks, and whether we request that they would pay for our sweeper to, you know, sweep it a couple of times a week, because the rubbish goes all the way to Melbourne, apparently. Like, it's horrendous. And you know, just driving up and down the main street, you know, you see it quite a lot. So maybe that's something else that we could talk to them about.
Can I just ask a question? Are you talking about the burnt bark,
Yeah.
as in rubbish?
Yes.
That's what the rubbish is?
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's out on the highway.
Yes,
from the
it's coming off
north
the
exit.
trucks and it's all the way to Melbourne, apparently, according to Anthony Churchill, who rang me about it to start with. He said it's all the way to Melbourne. It causes a lot of problems, but like in our town, it's a bad look if it's on our main street. That's all.
If I may, Madam Mayor. The map, the map that we will provide as part of the approval process, which shows the laden truck route, will also have some words in there about using bins and things like that for the actual litter that truck drivers might produce, and ask them to be considerate of that. No, you didn't mean that, but I took that opportunity to advise councillors that that has been an issue as well, that has been raised about litter from truck drivers, takeaway meals and things like that. So we're trying to address that. It's up to what the Director of Engineering might think about sweeping the street, whether he's happy just that our normal activities might deal with that anyway, whether it's, because part of our program would involve sweeping Albury Street for sure. So I might hand that.
Thanks, Mr. Kane. I think the sweeping the main street, we haven't had any complaints about the main street, personally. What I haven't taken through staff, or staff have not raised. Obviously, there's been problems in Bond Street and Millswood Road, and obviously we're currently sweeping on behalf of Malek to keep that maintained. But Albury Street, I've not heard of complaints from staff, not saying it's not happening, but it could be accommodated if necessary, but obviously there'd be a cost to Malek's to do that, so it would have to be taken on notice, and that's it. And it can be done, and if Malek's willing to pay for it, that's fine. It could be done.
Councillor Quinn?
Madam Mayor, I think as a council we've got to come up with some conditions which satisfy the local people within reason, keep the town in its pristine look the way it is, but the hours have got to be relevant to the operation. If they need to operate till 10:30 of the night to get the 2 turnarounds out of Melbourne, that is a commercial problem that if we change that, they might disappear. The effect, I'll get the words right, the economic effect of around Holbrook and surrounding with all these people coming through has got to be staggering compared to a lot of other places. They all must spend the odd 50 cents, which doesn't happen anywhere else. The other thing is, if we decide to make it too tough and brush them away, no effect for Holbrook sort of thing. So I think if it's, and I'd suggest, and I'd like Mr. Kane's comments, is it possible for them to operate between 6 a.m. in the morning and 10:30 at night, or is it 6 a.m. not early enough? Well, 5 a.m. 5 a.m. to 30 a.m.
So if councillors are of mine, I think it'd probably be, I hadn't done it before the meeting, but at condition 8 we could just change potentially from 6 a.m. to read 5 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. That would be the change, that, and then everything else would be fine.
What about that weekend?
I would be inclined to leave it as he originally asked for it, and that was what was notified to people. So I don't think that that's, you know, I don't think that if we've notified it at 6 a.m. to 4 p.m, we have to leave that. We've notified the other hours at far lesser shutdown period than what they actually got. So there's no problem with changing that. We're giving more, but to change from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m, I don't, on the weekends or whatever he was seeking, which Yeah, I don't think that should occur unless that went through some sort of notification period. So I'd be inclined to leave that weekend closure as he was originally asked for at 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and just change the other hours.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Director, how about at the end of it, we say that we're happy for you to, the GM will have to get the words right, monitor the situation, and if there needs some adjustment, come back to council. And that leaves the door open then to...
I did take some advice about that and to see whether I could write some sort of condition as like a reviewable condition, like you suggest, Councillor Quinn, and I got told that unfortunately you can't do that. You know, you basically, how I structured it is the best that I could come up with, and if it, like as I said to Councillor Knight, if it's not working out, you've got other avenues through other legislation, which you don't like to do, but you can do it, okay? So, but to write a reviewable condition is, I was told it's not possible to do that. You've got to just put your stake in the ground, you've got to leave it alone, essentially. So, they can come back, but I can't draft it.
Councillor Weston?
There we are, thank you. What is the purpose of the unloading and reloading?
Just in my own mind, I haven't asked for clarification, but in my own mind, it's just efficiencies. Now, obviously, I think going the harvest truck might be a fair degree of specialty in doing that. I think going up into the mountains and taking it back down to Holbrook would involve a fair bit of expertise, which mightn't be required just driving down to Melbourne down the Hume Highway. So I imagine it's for that reason that there's this degree of specialism in the actual harvest drivers going and collecting the logs. So I think that might be what is happening, although some do directly go down to Melbourne as well from where it's being harvested, left on the truck and straight down. Not everything's going through this site, but I think that is the reason, Councillor Weston.
Wouldn't it perhaps be something to do with the hours they're putting in as well? Because they're starting, some of those guys are starting at 4 a.m, 3 or 4 in the morning loading, so you know, there's rules about how long you work before you have to have your stops and things as well.
Yeah, look, I think that's all part of the whole box and dice really as to how it works. And they do 2 return trucks loads a day, those that go to Melbourne, and the others come in, they bring them in from the forest. So there are 2 separate lots of drivers. Some bring them in, and they are employing some local people as well to drive those trucks. They bring them in. You should come down and have a look at the operation and you'll get a really good idea of what goes on. It is incredible. And it's all unloaded. They all go into a big pile, and I think they semi-sort them and they strip a bit of the burnt bark off. So there's a big pile of burnt bark there. And then the next truck comes in and it loads. But they have the trucks loaded and unloaded in a big line, and they come in that way. And they just all come in, it just rotates in through the yard, off, down they go, and away they come. They weigh them, and it's like a big conveyor belt, the whole thing. But it did start off in a pretty rough sort of a fashion. When we were sort of first alerted to it, it was pretty rough and ready, to be honest. But I think I complained a bit, and I think Councillor Parker did, because we were just concerned at what was going on. It looked a bit, to me, it looked a bit dangerous as well, because there were trucks everywhere at one stage, and as Councillor Parker said, there were 53 there one day, and that would not have been an unusual sight to see. But it is working much more efficiently now, and I think this is a good process that they've gone through, and I think it satisfies my concerns anyway. And it is working a lot better. So it's been going since a fair while.
March or April?
Yeah, March maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much log would be being
April?
brought in at the moment because it's so wet and they can't actually travel much.
They come in on singles and leave on doubles.
Yeah.
That's the efficiencies of the business, pretty much.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Quinn, sorry.
Second.
Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Schulg. That we resume standing orders. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Better do that. So the adjustments have been made. Can we just have a look at it? Thank you.
I'm happy, Madam Mayor, to move the resolution in its entirety with the adjustments to the hours being made.
I'll second that.
Moved Councillor Quinn and seconded Councillor Schulg. Moving the resolution. Any further discussion or comments? If not, I'll ask you to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Yes, unanimously. Thank you. Right, item number 2, policy developments.
I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor
Sorry,
Hicks.
seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Meyer, seconded. Do you wish to make any comments? Any opposition, councillors? No, I declare that carried. Thank you. Governance, number 1, the council's response to the coronavirus COVID-19. Thank you. Councillor Knight has moved.
Seconded, Madam
And
Mayor.
Councillor Meyer seconded the recommendation. Do you wish to speak, Mr Pinnock?
Happy to answer questions, Madam Mayor. Correct. We'll be undertaking the inspections because we've got an agreement with a partnership with the New South Wales Food Authority to do that. But the intent was that we wouldn't charge for those inspections this year, given that the hospitality industry is probably one of the hardest hit in our shire anyway. So yeah, the figure that I've quoted there in the budget implications of $3,500 is what it will cost this financial year if we don't charge. Well, it's a matter for council, but it's I guess the brief I thought I probably had was to bring forward initiatives where I thought they were appropriate to provide some relief, and I think food inspections are a tricky one. They're unpopular at the best of times. I think in the current climate, not so much the inspection, but the fact that we do the inspection, possibly ask for some rectification works and then charge them for the privilege of doing that. So they're always a little bit unpopular, and I guess in the current climate, when those businesses have been pretty hard hit, they'd be even more unpopular. But it's a matter for council.
Any questions or comments? Prepared to vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference.
Move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Meyer.
And, go on.
I'll second it.
Councillor O'Neill.
One question, Madam
Seconded.
Mayor.
Yes.
To the General Manager. How sure are you that the conference will be held?
I'm not sure at all, Councillor Meyer. You'd think in the current climate it would be doubtful. As I've said in the report, some councils have already made the decision not to attend. Whether in the absence of a council they might try to do something electronic, absence of a conference in person, whether they would try to do something electronic, I don't know, but I think that would be pretty difficult given the numbers. But obviously if it doesn't go ahead, well then you know, the resolution won't go anywhere. Pardon the pun.
Have they set a go, no-go date?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment. But look, I think, you know, now that we're in the middle of August, it's only 3 months away. You know, I think it'd be getting pretty, you know, I just, not knowing the venue, but, you know, you still got to have 4 square metres per person as it is at the moment. So that's a very big venue if you were going to have most of the people at the conference most of the time. So it's going to be really tricky how they manage that. But I think, you know, I think we need to possibly pass the resolution. We need to consider what motions that we want to put forward. And then if it's cancelled to a later date, then I guess we deal with that at the time.
My concern was about the resolutions.
Madam Mayor, is it recommended that we include who might be that observer at this time? If it is, I'd like to suggest that Councillor O'Neill, for the first time in her term on council, is now available in a position to in a position to attend. So I'd suggest that she be considered as the observer in that case.
Geez, I was going to make an amendment there, but...
Mover and seconder happy with that?
I moved, so... No, sorry, no, I didn't. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I was going to suggest something, yes, but...
I don't know what council thinks out of mind, but I had in mind an amendment. I was going to suggest we said no observer this time. I don't mean to be spiteful or anything, but it's a cost saving and I'll move that way.
Yeah, well, that was exactly what I was going to suggest. Given that everywhere else the budget's quite tight, we need to show a bit of responsibility.
Councillor Quinn and Councillor Hicks moved and seconded. Right?
I'd speak in favour of the motion, if I might. I do consider that, yes, we are having constraints and we've already had to manoeuvre through other issues. And I think for the rest of the year, that'll be the way the game goes, simply because COVID is just changing the whole environment of where we are. The very small amount that might be saved by not sending an observer for the first time in so many years, I don't believe is necessary on this particular item. Whoever the observer might be, there are only 2 people that I'm aware of on this council who haven't had the opportunity to ever attend an annual conference, and they would be Councillors Weston and O'Neill. And I honestly believe that as councillors, you gain so much from the interaction. There's no other better grounding than going to one of those conferences to learn from others' poor behaviours, but also to learn from just the way in which people debate motions and put things forward, and it can't do anybody any harm. And I really think the benefits to council outweigh any cost that might be incurred.
Any other speakers? No?
Only
Councillor
to
Meyer?
endorse the remarks of Councillor Rosman, Madam Mayor, I think it's essential that there is an extra there, because it does give them the opportunity to take part in the debate. Whether it's legal or not, we do swap the voting machines around from time to time and different people get to have a try at them.
The amendment, Madam Mayor, was whether it be a saving of $500 or $1,000 to Tony Quinn. That's a fair amount of money to save.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak?
No, I just thought after 16 years it'd probably be really good to go and beneficial to my general PD, really.
All right, councillors, there is an amendment there. You can all see it up there on the screen. I'm asking you to vote in favour of the amendment. Those who are in favour of the amendment. 1, 2, 3. Councillors Shilg, Hicks and Quinn. There it is there. That's in favour of the amendment was Hicks, Quinn and Shilg, councillors. And those against? Meyer, Weston, Knight, O'Neill, Parker and Wilton. Thank you. I declare the amendment lost. So I'll need a further amendment or a further motion. Sorry. Okay.
I'll move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Well, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll go back to the motion. Prepared to vote. Those in favour? Meyer, Weston, Knight, O'Neill, Parker, Wilton. And against? Shilg, Hicks and Quinn. Thank you. That's carried.
Madam Mayor, could I now move the secondary motion that the observer on this occasion, if the conference proceeds in this year, be Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'm happy to second it. I'm embarrassed that I went last year and you didn't. Oh, but I also did get a lot out of it, so I would, yeah.
Councillor Parker will second that. Are you prepared to vote? Any opposition to that motion? No? That's carried. Thank you. Yes, all in favour. Unanimous. Item number 3, the REROC report, membership commitment.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer, seconded. Councillor Quinn? Councillor Knight, thank you. Do you wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, it's an organisation we've been part of, we need to be part of, we can't walk away from it, we are committed to it, full stop.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn, you wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, there's obviously something wrong with my IQ, but I'll leave other people to tell me what is wrong with it. You've got REROC and you've got JO. They're both trying to do similar things. Why on earth cannot the chairman of REROC see this? Other than, I know we're on here, other than what I hold down a big job. It would save us, is it 40? A membership?
About that.
Well, the membership of both organisations is about, we've got in a report, 48,000, I think.
Yeah. We'll cut that in half. Anyway,
Yeah,
but I actually think in this day and age that somehow or other they should be able to come together. The other ones, the JOs are going to be forced on us whether we like it or not.
Well, look, certainly the intent is to move to one organisation. Now, you will recall earlier this year I put a report to Council which supported moving away from the Riverina JO and to concentrate our efforts on REROC with a company limited by guarantee. Unfortunately, when the local government economic stimulus package was released, to access that, we had to remain part of a JO for the next, we had to commit to remaining part of the JO for the next 2 years, which we did because we couldn't afford to forego their payment of the increase of the emergency services levy for this year, because that was about $200,000. So there is the intent, I think, in the will by the large majority of councils to move to one organisation. We were hoping to do that through the course of this financial year. Obviously that's now not possible because all councils have signed that funding agreement. So that's why REROC are now seeking our commitment to ride that 2 year period out, for it to be reconsidered. But by reducing from two organisations to one, because they're both, or the JO at the moment is only a part-time organisation because it's concentrating on the 3 core activities of JOs, and then REROC more or less is more of a full-time operation. So of the financial modelling that's been done, if we were to go to one organisation, the membership fee will drop, but from 48,985 in 2021-22 to a projected 39,750 if it was in one organisation now. So it still would be a saving of $9,000, which is not to be sneezed at for sure. But I think at this point in time, even though we're in very difficult times, I think it would be silly for us to not remain part of REROC because, to be honest, that's where we're getting most of our savings through programs that were involved with REROC and not so much with the JO. But anyway, look, that's probably answered the question, I think. And
I understand the concept, but I did make a comment about my own mental capacity. But our masters are going to make us join the JOs. They are going to make us. I mean, anybody ought to be able to see that. That's all I'm harping on, Mr.
Well, yes, and look, I think if that's the case, Councillor Quinn, then I don't think that, or I think it's highly unlikely that REROC would continue past that two-year period. I would think that if there is no other way, and like, if we recall what the recommendation said at the time, it was really around giving, the executive of RIVJO and REROC the authority to enter into discussions with the Minister for Local Government to try and progress moving away from the JO and into a company limited by guarantee, because you need ministerial approval to do that. So none of the councils that were a party to that decision really knew what the outcome of that was, but we were going to make the case and make it strongly that we felt that we were going to be better off. In relation to JOs, yes, I think you're right. It's certainly the feeling of the government that they would like to see them as their preferred model moving forward, but at least I think 2 of the JOs currently do not have executive officers, and several of the JOs are already under financial strain. So I think there is a lot of water to go under the bridge over the next 2 years to actually ascertain whether the JO model moving forward across the state is a viable model, because not all other organisations of the state had a regional organisation of councils. We did here. Riverina Murray, along the Murray River had one, and the councils in central New South Wales had one. But apart from that, there wasn't a lot of regional organisations of councils in rural areas. So I think there is a lot of water to go under the bridge in relation to how financially sustainable joint organisations are going to be in the long term under the current structure.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
I'd speak in favour of the motion, If we'd had our others, I believe we probably wouldn't have stayed with the JO concept, because as the General Manager has said, we gain so much from being a part of REROC, and we have over many, many years. JOs haven't proved themselves. They may never prove themselves. It was something introduced by the department saying that this had to happen. They did it at the same time as they did so many other things with regard amalgamations and disbanding of councils. And I do believe that sometime down the track, whether it's in this government or this term of government in the future, they will do a review. And that might be the time when this council makes an enormous decision. But we could not miss out on the stimulus package, and so we were put in a position where we decided to stay with the JO. I think we'd be cutting our noses off to spite our face to walk away from the preferred option, which I believe would have been to be with REROC.
Any further comments or questions, councillors? No? Prepared to vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Corporate
next
community.
one.
I'll second
for
that
the
one.
recommendation.
Oh, sorry, policy development, number 4. You'll
I'll
move?
move it, yes.
Thank you.
And
And
I'll
second,
second,
councillor Shulk. Do you wish to speak? No. Any opposition? I declare that carried. Thank you.
I might just make the comment that we did have our first random alcohol and drug testing last Wednesday. So it was quite imminent because it was as these business papers were being delivered, I suppose, or finalised, which went pretty well. No, it wasn't actually. But it turned up negative results, so I suppose that's a positive thing. But it's been something that we've been working towards for quite a while, and it was good to finally get there.
All right. Now, Corporate and Community Services, item number 1. Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. David Maxwell, welcome again. You're going to come up here. You're going to be the boss up here for the moment, are you?
I've been told that that's what I have to
Very good. Oh, well, you know, you've just got to do what you've got to do. So, welcome and good to see you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Fire away. It's the floor.
And good evening, councillors. Couple of minor technical things. Firstly, this is the report of the Audit Committee as required by our charter. Sure, I drafted it, but it went to the meeting and it was adopted by the committee, so it's the committee's report. Even closer. And accordingly, the recommendation should really be that the report be received and noted. Key things out of the report, and I'm assuming that everyone has, of course, studied, as with all your meeting papers. External audit, nothing much new to report there. The Auditor General still in the view of management and supported by the Audit Committee is misinterpreting one of the fundamental bases of accounting in relation to RFS. The amount is not material. It does not change their opinion, but they do like to try to tell us that we've got our sums wrong, and we believe they're wrong. The other thing is too, the Auditor General for all councils basically that I'm involved in, and certainly all councils who use the authority system, are coming up with criticisms in relation to logging of access by super users and the suppliers of the authority system just don't make that facility available to council. Excuse me, to councils to use. So there's nothing that our staff can do about it, and frankly the Audit Committee doesn't really view that as a major risk. On the internal audit front, with the change in internal auditors between the 2019 financial year to the 2020 financial year, it always takes a little time to get things up and running, and we only received one internal audit report this year. That's just the way it is, but next year we'll be catching up on our schedule. With the internal audit reports, so far, basically all of the internal audits that we have commissioned have been sort of rather large topics that have resulted in quite a long list of recommendations of matters that can be improved, where controls can be tightened and so forth. And of course this takes quite a deal of particularly senior staff time, and with the COVID-19 situation, senior staff time has been at a premium. So there have been delays in resolving some of the issues that have been raised by internal audit. We view that as unfortunate, but the whole COVID thing is unfortunate, so there's nothing much we can do on that. We have received other reports and considered other reports that have been referred by staff. The new risk management and internal audit framework from the Office of Local Government. Frankly, that sounds a bit like or reminded me very much when I was listening to your discussion on the joint organisations, that a lot of the stuff that went into that document sounded like a good idea at the time, but there ain't no way it's going to work the way they think it will, and certainly it's not practical for rural councils, smaller councils, really not really practical for any council that's smaller than Campbelltown. However, we believe the requirements for the changes to the audit committee have also been deferred 12 months with the deferral of the elections. We'll find out only when they choose to tell us, and once they do tell us, well, then your General Manager will brief Council on what is necessary and what changes are necessary to your audit committee structure. On the risk management front, again, Jackie's been under a heck of a lot of pressure with other matters that have been raised associated with COVID-19, but she has foreshadowed the imminent completion of the risk register, and that will enable the audit committee to more closely fine-tune our internal audit assignments, so that instead of giving a big amorphous topic, we can target particular areas, particular controls that we want to test. If I can try and give an example, for yourself, if you're looking at the risks related to motor vehicles, that is a very, very big, wide topic. You can split it up into accidents, infringement notices, destruction of the asset, and so forth, and that is more closely targeting. But you can go even more closely, target even more closely, and in infringement notices you can split up into speeding tickets, tickets for talking on the phone, parking tickets, and depending where you are, which council area you are, of course parking tickets in Sydney would be a significant risk. In Holbrook, I'd suggest not so significant. And so the audit committee can then have the internal auditors target only those areas that are of particular significance to the council and its situation. And if we do that, That then means, firstly, the internal audit assignment will cost the council rather less, and we would then would no doubt get additional assignments equally targeted, but also it would not involve a heck of a lot of staff time to make whatever fixes are necessary or suggested by the recommendations from the internal auditor. And so we are getting rather closer to that situation. It was only when I read the meeting papers that I was aware that Councillor Knight is finishing up, and it's an ideal opportunity for me to thank you for your contribution to the committee over the years you've been a member, and also I particularly want to acknowledge Steve and his staff, David, Dean and Jackie, for their contribution and support. It's the one time each year where I get to meet with you councillors and for you to have any opportunity to ask questions. For you to ask questions on what the heck we're doing, what do we think we're achieving. I've tried to put it in this report, Madam Mayor, if I can open the floor to any questions from any councillors.
Councillors, Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To David, where do the RFS assets go? Or where should they go?
The fundamental accounting rule is that your accounts include all assets over which you have control, and of course you have to recognise the concomitant liabilities. It's the view of management and of the Audit Committee that Council in fact does not control the RFS assets. Even though the Rural Fires Act does say that Council has legal title to the assets, we believe that it's the RFS fire control officers, the RFS staff that actually control, firstly, what assets are acquired, where they're disposed of, whether they get taken to a particular fire or not. And unlike over 30 years when I first got involved in local government, the RFS weren't able to remove a fire appliance from out of the Shire area unless they had permission of the mayor, the president, or an equivalent officer. Now they just, if the fire control officer wants it to do it, he sends it. And so the Audit Committee's taking the view that we don't have control. It's actually the RFS and the RFS officers that have control, not Council. Council just pays for them.
Councillor Quinn, again.
Clarifies something, David, but the next step is how do you endeavour to get some ownership? Every brigade that I know of, and I'm very close to 3 brigades, over many years, a normal year might put in 20 or 30k of their own money. And of course the system just gobbles it up. Where can there be, or is it possible that there's some other layer of above the RFS that might be accountable to recognise this, or is it just going to be all... I understand exactly what you said. Council's got actually absolutely no control, whereas 15 or 20 years ago we did have all those things. But as the government body of any government body that might pick up the challenge and be accountable for it, or are they just going to let it simmer on?
Under the accounting standards, the RFS at state level should be recognising those assets. They should be maintaining the inventory, they should be valuing them and revaluing them every 5 years, and including them in their books. The Auditor General has audited the RFS for many years, and has, perhaps I can say,
has swallowed the RFS story that the assets belong to council but not the RFS. Well, yes, council does have legal title, but that is irrelevant for accounting purposes, and so the RFS should be accounting for it. As to whether there's any other potential body that can control the RFS on the use and disposition of these assets, that's a political question, and I'm only a bean counter.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Meyer?
You raised the spectre about the accounting feasibility of council owning all the fire trucks. But we're living in a different world now and we're buying multi-million-dollar aircraft. How are you going to apportion those back to something the council might claim part of?
Councillor, no, we're going the other way. We're saying that the Management and Audit Committee are saying, no, we don't have control of these assets. We should not be accounting for them. We do not account for them. The Auditor General is trying to say you've got title to these assets, you should be accounting for them. We're saying, no, we don't have control, and control is the critical matter from an accounting point of view. So, no, we're not interested in getting any split up of any aircraft anywhere. Well, the funding formula for council's contribution to RFS is very complex, and they're making attempts to try and change them as a result of the emergency services levy that they made one attempt to bring in, but found that they'd messed that up. So that's sitting somewhere on someone's drawing board in the bureaucracy in Sydney, and what is going to come out from that, nobody knows, especially not them.
Another one, Councillor
No, I was just going to make comment on that EIS that we were one of the councils who really wanted that moved through, but it didn't happen. So.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Thank you, David, for being here to have this discussion with our councillors and staff. So, and thank you for your
Madam
contribution to our audit committee.
I'm not aware that there's anything that would prevent any interested councillor in attending an audit committee meeting as purely and simply as an observer, should you wish at any time. Simply pass that on. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, if I could, I'll move the recommendation, or move the adoption of the report. At the same time, I'd also like to include in that adoption recommendation the thanks of the council to both the Mayor and the other people who sit on that committee. It's another one of those days where you have to get up, dressed up for half a day, go around, sit along and listen to a meeting, go home and then get back to doing something else.
Thanks, Councillor Meyer. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Knight, thank you. Any comments or questions? No. Prepared to vote? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, the interim quarterly 2019-2020 quarterly budget review as at June 30.
I'll move for the adoption, Madam Mayor, to enable discussion.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Comments or questions, councillors?
Madam Mayor, on page 33, I presume that the man on the left's going to answer the questions. Other community services were minus 1,000, which is money to me.
Sorry, Councillor Quinn, but I can't spot it immediately. That area contains costs and income relating to the newsletters that, for Culcairn and Henty, and also a cost for the Culcairn men's shed. So I can only think that in the wash-up of the adjustment it's got something to do with one of those activities, but I can't really spot from what I have in front of me what exactly it is. I'm happy to come back to you.
It's on page 114 of 148. So it's basically, as Mr Hart has said, $728 for the Culcairn med shed rates that Council agreed some years ago to waive on an annual basis. So I would say, because the newsletters are okay.
On page 34, I take it the public conveniences blowouts, just the extra cost for toilets?
34. So
Or do you want to make a comment on that, or you go?
It is a larger budget. We have a lot of public conveniences, and obviously, yeah, I think it's pretty close to the budget figure for the overall budget that we've got in that area, which is near $100,000 odd. Yeah, again, that is in relation to, there was an over expenditure on the skate parks, and that's what's been costed that area, but it's been offset by other costs that we've saved in footpath construction in that way. Yeah, but it's been offset by savings within the footpath budget, which is, I have to have a look at, on page 37, as you can see, there's a positive of 43,000 there versus a negative of 47,000, so they pretty much offset each other.
Haven't done. It's a positive.
Now the positives will be that we've done a good job and not cost ourselves any money.
No, to clarify Councillor Quinn's question, no, if there was work not done, then it'd be in the carried forward column. The work would have to be done this year. So that's just the estimates were, you know, a little bit over what it actually cost to do those works on behalf of the state government.
All done. Any other comments or questions, councillors? If not, I'll ask you to vote. Those in favour, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Policy development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I might just make a comment on this one, and just to say that in relation to the loans to community groups policy, even though I did mention in the report here that I'd made no amendments, I actually did make an amendment, which I have to admit completely escaped my memory in the time between I amended the policy and wrote the report. Obviously a lot happened and that little piece just left. So anyway, the main change to the policy is that the interest rate on the loans used to be 3%. The policy now states an interest rate of 2%, which is more reflective of current interest rate levels. So, but apart from that, look, all the other policies, very minor changes. And as you can see, there's two policies there where we're saying that we no longer need the policy because the award conditions have been clarified over the years during award updates, that we no longer need a separate policy to further explain some ambiguities that used to exist in those areas.
Please. Councillor Parker, seconded. Councillor Shulg. Comments or questions any further? Prepared to vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. Item number 4, short-term licence for a Crown Reserve lease.
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Knight. Questions or comments? Proposed.
Couple of quick.
Question with regard the school building on that site. Has there ever been any move to preserve it in any way, or to invite interest from the community in preserving it? Is it past its use by?
Through you, Madam Mayor, look, from memory, there was some interest many, many years ago in having something done. Well, quite clearly, nothing ever happened. Look, it hasn't been raised with us for many, many years, and I think, you know, that would be 15, 20 years ago that it was first mooted that perhaps something could be done. It's certainly nothing recently, no.
Not amongst this particular thing because it's about a licence, but it might be something to think for the future, not necessarily to do anything to maintain or restore, but at least recognise that the building is there and the history it's had.
Any other comments or questions?
Quick couple of questions.
Sorry, Councillor Quinn.
Through you, Madam Mayor, why only 12 months? And are the costs borne by the leasing? It's a very expensive to advertise for 3 acres.
Most of these licences, we try and keep them on a relatively short term, just because of the nature of the area and the licence and the regulations involved with Crown lands these days. We try and keep them short term. As far as the costs go, most of these costs we don't set. They're part of the Act now as far as how much we have to charge for the fees and so on and so forth. And I suppose people weigh up the cost versus the benefit that they get. I acknowledge that it's only a small parcel of land, and people just have to decide that, well, they're willing to accept those costs for the benefit that they're going to potentially receive from it.
It's costs, it's not an expression of interest.
As far as the advertising fees and so on and so forth are fixed costs, and it'll be an expression of interest process for people to apply, and they'll have to factor those costs into their calculations.
An expression of interest through you, Madam Mayor, for $50, and I'm the only applicant, what happens?
Well, you would have there would be minimum costs. There would be minimum costs involved in actually signing off on the licence. I can't tell you offhand, Councillor Quinn, what those costs are, but the costs would be involved in the advertising and the minimum licence fees that are set under the Act, because all of these decisions now and the fees and the signing off and so on are with the Minister for Crown Lands through his delegates, obviously. If we get a very low expression of interest, what would happen then, I don't really know. I'd have to take that on notice.
All right. councillors. It's been moved and seconded. Prepared to vote. Those in favour? Any against? Carried. Thank you. Engineering, the Henty Rail Crossing Project update.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'll move the recommendation with a tongue-in-cheek comment to both the General Manager and the engineer that I drove past today, and we've almost got our flashing signals up, but there's no road either side of them.
Okay. You're going to move the recommendation?
Your comments are noted, Councillor Meyer.
Yeah, Councillor Meyer and Councillor Weston.
I moved the recommendation, yes.
You've moved it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
With tongue-in-cheek, yes, noted. Do you wish to speak, Mr Pinnock? No. Mr Blackie?
Happy to take questions through you, Mayor.
Any questions, comments? No. Prepared to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. It's getting there. Items to be referred to closed committee. Item number 1 and 2, 3 and 4.
I think we actually sort of moved 4 earlier.
We did. So 1, 2 and 3. Did Councillor Quinn moved and Councillor Parker seconded? All those in favour? Yes, carried. Thank you. Officers' reports, receive and notes, Part B. What a year. Parts P, B and C for information and move. And D. Yeah. Councillor Parker and Councillor Quinn, any comments or questions? Councillors, any comments, queries? There's a lot in that, a heck of a lot.
Is that including the Rangers report?
Rangers
Did we
is
go
in
that
there.
far?
Yep, somewhere. Where's the... Should be in there, I've seen it.
I've just had a... can I speak on it now? Just with the expenses with cats and dogs, we seem to have a lot of issues with cats and dogs in our shire. I've been seriously thinking about, or looking to putting it to council about creating some sort of cat ownership policy shire-wide. There's lots of feral cats, and in the other paperwork we can see the expenses of it all, and they do an enormous amount of damage with native wildlife. So I was just wondering how we go, well, do I have to come up with some sort of a policy, or can I just put it out there that we look into creating some sort of a policy? I know pets as companions is very important, and dogs are often used for that, but responsible pet ownership, do we need to sort of do some more advertising or something? But cats are just a dreadful problem across the shire. And I know there's moggy people around, and I don't mind them, but when I see little feathers in my backyard, yeah. So is there something we can do across the shire to address the situation?
My suggestion, if I may, Madam Mayor, is that you look at putting a notice of motion to the next council meeting.
I shall. Thank you. Sorry, may I have one more question in regards to the weeds? Sorry. Do the council weeds guys, outdoor guys, manage all our weed spraying, or do we ever contract weed spraying out for any reason? Just a question, thank you.
We do contract roadside spraying out at different times of the year, quite a bit. So yes, there's a bit of, but it's a bit of both. There's a fair bit of council staff involved in weeds management and some contractors as well, overall.
Some pretty big areas, so yeah.
Pretty big areas, and at certain times of the year, you wouldn't be able to get through your program unless we brought in some
Outside.
contractors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just on that, I guess, we bring in a significant amount of contractors to, I guess, suppress St John's wort because, you know, obviously there's a large area of infestations, you know, which needs to be done in a relatively quick period of time. But with some of the other weeds, you know, that are, as this report says, done through the off-season, if you say out of the St John's wort season, that's generally done by council staff.
Councillors, if I could just have your attention. I need a recommendation of the closed committee that the foregoing report and the recommendation from the closed council committee of the whole be adopted. I need a mover and seconder.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Meyer, and seconded Councillor Parker. Any against? No. All in favour? Good. Thank you. Now, do I have to declare what was happened in there?
Yes, you should, I guess.
So, recommendation going back. Gee. Can't find it now. Recommendation number 1, 2, 3 were carried. Is that all we need to say?
Maybe just in relation to what the issue was.
Okay, item number 1 was an offer to purchase of a property at Walla Walla was accepted. The item number 2, offer to purchase property in Holbrook Industrial Estate, will be subject to further negotiation. Does that sound okay? And writing off of unrecoverable rates and charges was accepted. Thank you. And the General Manager's report was approved. Thank you. Now, just before I close off, I'd like to just express sincere thanks to Councillor Knight on her fantastic contribution to councils over 33 years. Fantastic effort. And thank you very much. And thank you for your support with our amalgamated council. I think it got off to a fairly rocky start, but I think we've come a long way, and I think it's a fantastic council that we're all part of, and I think you've had a great part to play in bringing it together, and we certainly appreciate that. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I'd ask Councillor Meyer, I think he'd like to say a few words also.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did say a few words at the presentation we made to Councillor Osborne on behalf of this council. I'd like to reiterate all the kind things I said then. I probably was so damn cold that night that I couldn't think of anything else to say. The Mayor did remind me the next morning on a very early phone call that it was -4 degrees that night. Unfortunately, we didn't pre-think it. We could have ordered some extra heaters, and I'm sure that would have made the night even more appreciative. But anyhow, you'll always remember the cold on your last night as a formal councillor at a function for you. Denise, on behalf of this council, as a newcomer to the council, might I express the appreciation for all the lessons that you've taught us over that period. Thank you for the points that you've made to us when we've stepped out of order, rightly or wrongly, and I wish you every success from this point forward.
Just say thank you again. And Heather, you mentioned the formation of this council, and I think we were blessed to have magnificent staff. We really were. They really came to the fore, and I think they were an example to a lot of the amalgamated councils at that time, who still are struggling in some aspects. I think the foundations that our staff set up and the way things were put in progress, it wasn't a rush to an end. It was a deliberative step forward, slowly but surely. Every now and then ministers would suddenly introduce something that knocked our rates processes out of the game, like the one that my friend Frank did, with regard the imposition of rates that couldn't be put onto anybody but those in rural and residential and business. Nothing could be done anywhere for the farming community. But I think the way they handled that, having already put it out on advertisement to everybody what was going to happen, they had to so very quickly just reformulate the whole rate structure. We had so many deliberations over so many years of what our structure should be, and I do believe that we're slowly getting to the point where people are, if they don't agree with it, they'll at least are now accepting it. I can't say I've loved every minute. I'd like to say I've loved almost maybe 90% of it, but I've learnt a hell of a lot, and that's gonna give me memories for a heck of a long time. And I have appreciated the comments people have made. Thank you very much, and thank you to your generosity over the period of those 33 years, and putting me in my place when I needed to be put there, and perhaps ignoring me when I needed to be ignored. Thank you.
I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Now,
Oh.